I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.
Hello there, Price of Reason here with a movie review. Many people don't remember this, but during most of the 1970s and 1980s, Disney was a company in both creative and financial decline. Their production studios that had once produced some of the best animation movies of all time were failing and losing money. But all that changed in 1989 when they took a gamble on the original animated version of The Little Mermaid, a movie that helped turn the company's fortunes around and launched what is known today as the Disney Renaissance era. The massive success of the original Little Mermaid helped re-establish Disney as an animated production powerhouse as they released additional animated modern classics such as Aladdin, The Lion King, Mulan, and more. Jump forward to 2023, where Disney are once again facing creative and financial issues, hoping that their new live-action version of The Little Mermaid will help turn things around for them once again. But the real question is this movie any good? And for me, the answer to that is no, not at all, especially in comparison to the original. Let's go over the 5 main reasons I think this movie is a complete failure. Number 1. Writing/messaging. The original Little Mermaid, in my opinion, had a perfect screenplay. Every scene was important and helped build the story and drive the plot forward. Every character had a clear personality and clear motivations for their actions. This new Disney Live Action Remake uses many of the exact same scenes as the original animated version, sometimes recreating them word for word, but it also makes several, modifications to the original screenplay in order to fit with, modern times. And these new changes really hurt the movie because they create major story issues that are simply never resolved, leaving us with what I believe is a narrative mess. Let me show you what I mean. In the original movie, Ariel sees Prince Eric and has a love-at-first-sight moment with him, fitting for this type of fairy tale. Her strong feelings for Eric are what motivate her to take action. She wants to be human so that she could be with Eric. At the same time, in order for her motivations to ring true to the viewer, in the original movie, Prince Eric is presented in a very positive light. He's kind, confident, strong, and heroic, which in 1989 were still considered good qualities for a man to have. But now in Disney's modern remake, Eric is no longer allowed to be too confident, too strong, or too heroic. Instead, his character has been modified, and now he mostly comes off as whiny and annoying, so we're not even sure why Ariel likes him, and apparently neither is she. And since most lines of dialogue about Ariel's positive feelings for Eric have been deleted in the new movie, the viewer no longer understands her desire to be human to begin with. To make matters worse, in this new version, Ursula puts an amnesia spell on Ariel so that she doesn't even remember that Eric has to kiss her within 3 days in order to break the spell. The reason for this drastic change is that apparently Disney didn't want to create the impression that Ariel is actually interested in men, which is odd because her interest in Eric is really what's supposed to drive the plot. Unfortunately though, the diminishing of Eric's character doesn't even end there. In the original movie, I think that it's at least implied that Eric's parents have passed away and that he's a somewhat independent guy. In this movie, though, his mother, the Queen, is actually alive and well, and she's there to tell him what to do because, of course she is. And if that isn't enough, there's also an additional twist. Eric isn't actually her biological son either. He was actually some type of orphan that she benevolently adopted or something, and it's even implied by Grimsby that Eric should be very thankful for that. But the modern-day modifications don't end there. Another huge mistake the writers make is that they completely change the ending of the movie. In the original, Ariel saves Eric from drowning early on in the movie, only for Eric to save her at the end by destroying Ursula with his ship. Narratively, it provides a nice balance where they both rescue each other at one point of the film. This remake, however, doesn't allow a man to save a woman, so Ariel has to rescue Eric at the beginning of the movie, and also save the day at the end by destroying Ursula with the ship herself. Beyond the annoying modern message here that men are useless and women don't like them or need them, this actually also creates a major screenplay problem. You see, the whole idea of Eric's character is that he's supposed to be a good sailor. They spend an entire movie establishing that, yet somehow when the story requires his exact expertise, he's nowhere to be found. It's a huge narrative setup still left over from the original movie that's simply left without a payoff in the new one. Another big narrative issue that arises from this very change is that with Eric no longer being a hero, why would King Triton even accept him as a husband to his daughter? Finally, even the supporting characters are diminished in this movie for some reason. In the original movie, Sebastian and a French chef play an ongoing cat and mouse game, which Sebastian ends up winning. This provides the original movie with some of its funnest moments, but that entire storyline has been completely deleted from this new movie, making it much less fun. Also, in the original movie, Scuttle the seagull has a great hero moment where he cuts the necklace from Ursula's neck, enabling Ariel to speak again. This clever act is an important story beat for his character, as up until that point, he is often portrayed as dim-witted. In this movie, though, the writers changed it so that Ariel would be the one to tear the necklace from Ursula's neck herself, so Scuttle doesn't ever get a moment to shine. Apparently, according to Disney, not only can a woman no longer accept any help from a man, she also can't accept any help from a seagull either. The problem with all of these modern changes to the story and characters is that they are so drastic that the story becomes incomprehensive at times, and the characters lose most of their agency. And the sad part is, the original screenplay was so well written that it didn't need many changes, if any. In automobile terms, it's as if the writers were given a Ferrari, but they decided to replace its engine with one from a Ford Fiesta. And while maybe that lesser engine can somehow get that car started, it's never going to give you that same type of high-quality experience. Number 2. The visuals. This movie may have cost $250 million to make, but even with all of its excessive visual effects, it somehow ends up looking rather cheap. Gone are all the vibrant colors from the original movie. The actors all look like they're floating around in front of a green screen, and then later awkwardly CGI'd into different scenes. But the biggest issue with the visuals is probably the animation of Ariel's sidekicks. In the original movie, these creatures have so many amazing facial expressions that you really believe that they're lifelike characters with real personalities. In contrast, this movie makes them look so realistic that it takes away all the magic surrounding them. Sebastian the crab now looks like the dinner special at your local Red Lobster, with googly eyes pasted on him. Scuttle the seagull looks like a pigeon that just took a dump on your windshield. And Flounder looks like any old goldfish that you'd find at an average pet store. As opposed to their original counterparts, they're pretty much expressionless. And it's not like the voice acting for them is that great either, which brings me to my next point. Number 3. Cast. Whether it's voice acting or physical acting, almost every character in this new movie is a heavily downgraded carbon copy of the original. When we think of great Disney Renaissance-era voice performances, we often think of Robin Williams as the genie in Aladdin, and James Earl Jones as Mufasa in Lion King. But I would argue that Samuel E. Wright's original voice acting for Sebastian is of that same caliber. With every word of Wright's, the late actor gave so much life to the Sebastian character that in many ways, he ended up being the heart of the original movie. In addition, Wright's singing in songs like Under the Sea and Kiss the Girl were perfect musical performances. In this movie, Sebastian is voiced by Daveed Diggs, who unfortunately doesn't voice him very well, and his singing is rather lackluster too. Now, it's nothing personal against Diggs, but he's simply poorly cast in this role, and he doesn't have the right personality for this specific character. But if it's any consolation to Diggs, the casting of Awkwafina as Scuttle is arguably even worse. In my opinion, her character just seems kind of annoying rather than endearing. And considering how important both of these characters were in the original, the way they look and sound in the new one really ruins the light-hearted tone this movie is supposed to have. As for the live-action actors, Javier Bardem is generally a decent actor, but you wouldn't know it from watching this movie. Most of the time his performance here seems half-hearted, as if somebody dragged him to a costume party dressed as King Triton. I do not buy him as King Triton, not even for 1 second. Jonah Hauer-King is also miscast as Eric. Beyond the ridiculous writing changes they made to the character itself, in my opinion, Hauer-King simply lacks the on-screen presence and charm to make the viewers connect with his character in any meaningful way. Surprisingly, as much as I don't prefer Melissa McCarthy's brand of, humor, I have to say that this is probably one of her better performances to date. Maybe because she just plays it straight. McCarthy does her best to emulate the original Ursula as voiced by late actress Pat Carroll, and overall, she does a fairly decent job. As for Halle Bailey as Ariel, I think her performance is pretty decent too. She has a great singing voice and a likable overall presence. I would say that her acting is just okay, but considering that this is her first major movie role, and most of her acting was done talking to herself in front of a green screen, I suppose her performance is serviceable enough. Let's put it this way, if everything else about this movie was at least pretty good, neither McCarthy or Bailey would be what ruins it, but at the same time, they can't save this movie either. Number 4. The music. The original movie had one of the better soundtracks I've heard for this type of fairy tale genre. Every song was well written, well placed, and always drove the story forward. For this updated version, Disney, with the help of Lin-Manuel Miranda, censored and/or modified some of the original songs because they were now deemed too problematic. For example, an entire verse where Ursula tells Ariel that many men would love a woman that doesn't talk was completely deleted. This change was rather dumb, as Ursula is a villain in the movie, so her speaking this way would actually make sense, and removing this part actually weakens her strength as an antagonist. In the song Kiss the Girl, lyrics have been modified to reflect that Eric has to have a conversation with Ariel about kissing her before actually kissing her, just to make sure that it's consensual. And yes, it's as cringe as it sounds, but look on the bright side. At least he doesn't ask her to sign an NDA. The Poisson song, originally sung by the French chef, has been completely deleted from the movie, along with the entire French chef character, because he's considered too controversial now. In addition to all of these wonderful modifications, new songs were inserted into the movie, written by Lin-Manuel Miranda and Alan Menken, the original composer from 1989. One of them is Prince Eric whining and talking about his feelings, further diminishing his character and making him seem like even more of a loser. Another song has Ariel singing about her feelings, even though at that point her character has already lost her voice and she shouldn't actually be able to sing. Yeah, don't think about it. Finally though, Lin-Manuel Miranda and Alan Menken deliver what is likely to go down as the worst Disney song ever made, a song called Scuttlebutt featuring Awkwafina and Daveed Diggs rapping, which feels about as organic as a feminist activist in a Miller Lite commercial. The song is so bad that even shill magazine Rolling Stone has called it one of the worst songs to ever appear in a Disney movie. Here's just a little snippet. Now imagine that going on for 3 minutes straight. But even with all these unnecessary musical changes and additions, Part of This World performed by Halle Bailey and Poor Unfortunate Souls performed by Melissa McCarthy both actually sound pretty good. Unfortunately, the rest of the original songs sound like late-night karaoke at a local pub. While the accompanying music sounds good enough, the people singing over it simply don't do the songs justice. Number 5. Political obsession. Much has been discussed about the casting of Halle Bailey as Ariel, and while I myself have never minded this casting, I also think that the controversy surrounding it has often been misrepresented by the excess media. It is my opinion that most people didn't actually have an issue with the casting itself, but rather with Disney's behavior surrounding it, as well as its ongoing obsession with certain political and trendy agendas. I believe that the real problem here is that Disney always seems to want to have their cake and eat it too. On the one hand, Disney themselves constantly pushed a PR narrative about the diversity of Bailey's casting and how diverse they are for casting her. Just one recent example for this is Lin-Manuel Miranda doing a reaction video on Disney's official YouTube channel where he gets all sentimental when seeing young girls feeling represented by Ariel's skin color. On the other hand, they also push a separate PR narrative, claiming that Bailey's skin color had no influence on their casting choice whatsoever. According to Disney, she got the gig solely based on merit. Now, in my opinion, this is a very annoying two-faced marketing strategy, and I think it's really unfair to Halle Bailey herself. Disney can't have it both ways. Either they're a bunch of virtue signalers, and that's why they hired her, or she's actually good in the role, which means they shouldn't keep bringing up her skin color at all. But by constantly pushing these two very different narratives in the press, I believe that Disney themselves are the ones that keep opening the door to such divisive discussions to begin with. And it's not like this even only applies to Halle Bailey and the Ariel character. And just to be clear, I believe diversity in movies is overall a positive thing, but Disney have become so obsessed with it these days that they no longer even pay attention to the familial relationships of their characters anymore. For example, every one of Ariel's sisters in this movie is from a different background, a different nationality, and has a different accent, so much so that if I hadn't been familiar with the original movie, I probably wouldn't have even realized that they're supposed to be her sisters. Also, if Javier Bardem is supposed to be their father, why does he look and talk nothing nothing like them. Did King Triton have several wives of different nationalities, or one wife that somehow gave birth to all these children of different nationalities? And if Melissa McCarthy is supposed to be Bardem's sister in this movie, why doesn't she look anything like him, and how come they have completely different accents? And on the island where Prince Eric is from, how come all the people, including his adoptive mother, are all also of completely different nationalities, accents, and backgrounds? I mean, this island only seems to have a population of about 20 people, so this really stands out. Now, I know some of you will tell me that this is a fantasy movie, so it doesn't matter that none of these people seem like they're from the same families or geographical locations, but I beg to differ. Even in a fictional fantasy, it still helps to keep the world building grounded with some sort of sense of locale. Look at House of the Dragon, for example, HBO's fantasy show about naughty people with dragons. In the source material, the sea snake is white, but that was changed for the on-screen adaptation. And even though it is indeed a fictional fantasy universe, they still offer up some type of explanation, implying that he's originally from a different geographical location. It's a minor detail, but I do think it helps. Also, when the sea snake has children with his wife, they're not suddenly Asian or Middle Eastern. They look consistent with what logic would tell us that their children would actually look like. When we lose all sense of locale, even in a fantasy world like in Little Mermaid, it sometimes even causes a sense of narrative confusion. That's why, in my opinion, diversity done right should always be executed in a more thoughtful and respectful way. Personally, I just wish that Disney would stop releasing these soulless remakes altogether. As far as diversity goes, why not create new movies based on new stories that are more diverse at their core? There are so many unexplored folklore stories from so many different cultures and countries around the world, and maybe Disney should focus on them for the future instead of just lazily rehashing their past. At the end of the day, I suppose there's something poetic about the original 1989 Little Mermaid ushering a new era of success and creativity for Disney, while this updated version is only highlighting their more recent era of failure and hypocrisy. What did you think of the Little Mermaid remake? Did you love it? Feel free to let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and also clicking on that wonderful notification bell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.